This is Chapter 7 of The Unsworn Heir, written by Alexi Hart. The council chamber smelled like wax and cold metal. She felt it before she saw it, the way the air thickened with control, the way every torch seemed placed to eliminate shadows, as if darkness itself were suspect. The High Warden guided her through the door with a hand on the cord, his posture a perfect imitation of indifference. He looked at her like he could taste her pulse. The bond mark answered with a slow, humiliating warmth, and the dark at the edges of the room seemed to breathe in time with them. But the bond thrummed beneath her skin, and she felt the truth anyway. He was taut. He was braced. He was listening for the moment she broke. The chamber was long and narrow, with a blackwood table running its length. At one end sat the minister in his white cloak, hands folded, expression composed. At the other end sat a woman with a crown of thin iron twigs set on her head. Crown regent, perhaps, or a royal proxy? Her eyes were pale and bored, the eyes of someone who had never been denied anything except mortality. Two priests of the radiant sea stood beside her, gold and white like beautiful wrought. Behind them waited a line of armed knights. Wardens lined the walls, silent, watchful. She felt their gaze like a cage. The minister smiled, as if he hadn't witnessed a forbidden rite an hour ago. "High Warden," he said, "you're late." The High Warden bowed his head once. The bond required stabilization. The regent's pale gaze slid over the unsworn's bound wrist, over her hood, over the slight tremor she couldn't fully hide. "Remove her hood," the regent said. The High Warden's hand tightened on the cord. The unsworn lifted her chin. No. The tether waited, ready to punish lies. She wasn't lying. The regent's mouth curved. "You misunderstand. That was not a question." A priest stepped forward, gloved hands outstretched, eyes glittering with sanctified hunger. The High Warden moved. Not fast, simply in the way a blade moved when it decided to cut. His arm came up, blocking the priest with a forearm. The priest stumbled back, startled. The room went still. The regent's pale brows lifted. "Warden." His voice was low. "No one touches her without my consent." The priest's face tightened. "Your consent is irrelevant. The sea is not the crown," the High Warden said. The regent's smile sharpened. "And yet we share the burden. You will comply." The unsworn felt the bond tighten, responding to the rising pressure, the threat of coercion. Heat gathered under her ribs, not desire this time. Fear. Fury. The kind of heat that turned sharp and dangerous. The High Warden's gloved hand brushed her elbow, barely a touch. The bond steadied. A whisper of warmth rolled through her belly, smoothing the edge of pain before it could bloom. Her breath hitched. She felt his breath hitch too. He was anchoring her, not as a master, as a partner in survival. The regent leaned forward, chin resting on one knuckle. "You are bound," she murmured, voice bored. "Then you are contained. That is all that matters." The unsworn's laugh was low. "Contained. How pretty a word for owned." The regent's eyes flashed, then cooled again. "Owned is the point." The priest beside her murmured a radiant blessing, fingers tracing a sunburst in the air. She felt it scrape at her blood like sand. "You will be delivered to the cathedral tonight," the priest said. "The High Saint wishes to see her." The High Warden's jaw tightened. "No." The regent's gaze sharpened. "Excuse me." The High Warden's voice stayed controlled. "The thornbind is unstable. Moving her to the cathedral now risks rot, risks a breach." One of the priests smiled. Rot is already here. We will cleanse it. The unsworn tasted bile. You don't cleanse. You carve. The priest turned his pale eyes on her. Careful, door. The bond shuddered. Pain flickered in her wrists, then eased as the High Warden tightened the cord and stepped half a pace closer, reducing distance. The Regent watched the exchange with open curiosity. Interesting, she murmured. The bond reacts. The minister nodded. As expected. Expected. They had planned this. She felt a cold fury settle in her bones. The Regent rose. Enough. High Warden, you will escort her to the cathedral within the hour. You will present her to the High Saint. The See will take responsibility for her purification. Purification, a word that always meant blood. The High Warden's shoulders went very still. His oath tightened around him like a noose. She could almost feel it, invisible but real, binding him to obedience. His voice came out rougher. If I comply, the bond will. Then manage it, the Regent said, impatient now. You are my warden. Do your job. Silence swallowed the room. The unsworn looked at the High Warden and saw something crack behind his eyes. Not his discipline, his faith in it. A quiet rage. She realized suddenly that this was the moment the crown enjoyed most. Not her suffering, his. Watching a weapon struggle against its own leash. The High Warden bowed his head. Yes, he said. The word tasted like ash. The bond tightened, a sharp, ugly pulse under her skin. Not because of the word, because of the coercion behind it. Rot stirred like a bruise spreading. She bit down hard on the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood, forcing herself not to react. If she reacted, the bond would flare. If it flared, the room would smell it, and the sea would smile. The Regent's attention moved on, bored again now that obedience had been extracted. Proceed. The council dismissed them with a wave. The room's tension loosened as wardens and priests shifted, voices resuming in low murmurs. The High Warden gripped her cord and pulled her toward the door. His hand was steady. His pulse, through the bond, was not. He moved quickly through the keep, taking hallways that avoided the main courtyards. Wardens stepped aside, faces careful. A few stared at her with curiosity. Most stared at him. At his tightened jaw. At the way his control looked. Strained. They reached the stable yard. A carriage waited, black and sealed, crown sunburst stamped on its doors. The sight of it made her stomach tighten. A cage on wheels. The High Warden opened the door and gestured inside. Get in, he said, voice flat. She looked at him. Is this your idea of keeping me alive? His gaze flickered. It's theirs. She laughed, bitter. Then you're still their weapon. His eyes flashed. Yes. The honesty hit her harder than any lie. She climbed into the carriage. The interior smelled of old perfume and cold straw. A narrow bench faced another. Iron rings were bolted to the walls. For chains. The High Warden climbed in after her, shutting the door. The carriage lurched as horses took up the pull. Darkness swallowed them, except for a small lantern set into the ceiling. The bond tightened immediately, reacting to confinement, to proximity. Her skin prickled. He sat across from her, posture rigid, hands on his knees, eyes fixed on the door, as if he could will it open. She felt the pressure of the bond building again, an ache spreading beneath her ribs. The carriage jostled over cobbles, and the ache sharpened. Pain bloomed in her wrists, then in her chest, then low in her belly. She sucked in a breath. He flinched. The echo of her pain hit him like a blow. His jaw clenched. "Breathe," he murmured. She glared. "Don't order me." His eyes snapped to hers. "Then tell me what you need." The question hit like a blade turned sideways. Need. She swallowed, breath shaking as the ache tightened. The bond wanted contact. It wanted alignment. It wanted... "I need you closer," she admitted through clenched teeth. The tether didn't punish her. She hadn't lied. His gaze darkened. "May I?" he asked, voice rough. Her throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. He moved. Not fast. Careful. He sat beside her instead of across, the bench creaking as his weight shifted. The bond eased slightly with the reduced distance, but the ache remained, pulsing, demanding more. Her breath hitched. "It's still..." "I know," he said. He lifted his gloved hand, hovering near her knee. "May I?" he asked again. Her pulse hammered. "Yes." His hands settled on her knee through her cloak. Warmth surged through her, thick and dizzying. The ache softened into heat. Her breath broke. She felt the echo in him, his inhale sharp, his restraint tightening like a fist. He swallowed. The bond steadied. For a beat, she could almost pretend the carriage wasn't a cage. Then the carriage jolted hard. Her body lurched into him. His arm wrapped around her automatically, catching her. The contact was full, chest to shoulder, her cheek against his armor, his hand on her waist. The bond flared. Heat spilled through her like fire poured too fast, bright and overwhelming. She gasped, fingers clenching in his cloak, her thighs pressed together. She felt his body react, an involuntary tightening, his breath going harsh, his arm holding her too tight for a heartbeat before he caught himself. He froze. She froze too, realizing how easily this could become something else, something neither of them had chosen. He loosened his grip immediately, the restraint returning with a snap. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice rough. "No," she whispered. Her cheeks burned. The bond hummed, hungry. He kept his hand at her waist, not moving, waiting. "May I keep holding you?" he asked low. The gentleness of the question made her throat ache. "Yes," she said, and meant it. His arm tightened again, controlled this time. The bond steadied. The ache eased. Warmth replaced pain, spreading through her belly like a slow, relentless tide. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, breathing with him, letting the alignment settle. When she opened them again, the lantern light caught the faint black veins at his wrist where his glove had ridden up. They pulsed once, then faded slightly, as if the bond's synchronization soothed even that. She stared. "You're getting worse," she whispered. His jaw set. "I'm getting managed." "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed. The carriage rolled on. For a time, they stayed like that, her pressed against his side, his arm around her, both of them breathing carefully, feeding the bond just enough to keep it from tearing them apart. Then she felt it. A shift in the air. Cold. The lantern flame flickered, leaning hard as if drawn toward a presence. Her blood went ice. The High Warden stiffened. "You feel it," she whispered. "Yes," he said, voice very quiet. Outside, the horses screamed. The carriage lurched violently, then stopped with a bone-jarring jolt. The High Warden released her instantly, drawing his sword in one smooth motion. The lantern swung. Shadows danced. She heard shouting outside, a warden's voice, a priest's voice. Then, a sound like metal scraping over stone. Slow. Patient. Hungry. Her skin prickled. The bond tightened, reacting to fear, trying to pull heat from her. Rot stirred beneath it, eager. The High Warden's voice cut through the dark. Don't panic. She laughed once, sharp. That's rich. The lantern flame guttered. Cold seeped in through the carriage walls like a breath. She smelled it then. Rot. Not subtle, not old. Fresh. Black-veined. The air tasted like spoiled iron. Something struck the carriage door. Wood cracked. She flinched, and the bond flared, pain lancing through her ribs. The High Warden swore and grabbed her wrist. Breathe, he said, rough. With me. I can't. You can, he snapped. Now. He pulled her close, pressing her bound hands to his chest plate, forcing proximity. The bond surged. Heat spilled through her, thick and dizzying, easing the pain, smoothing the edge of panic. She felt his breath hitched and harsh. He was using his discipline like a brace for her blood. Outside, another crash. The door splintered. A pale hand, no, not pale, gray, dead, punched through the wood, fingers tipped with blackened nails. Hollow. Her stomach dropped. The creature's arm was wrapped in rusted chainmail. Its flesh clung to bone like wet paper. Its eyes were empty sockets filled with darkness that moved. It wasn't alive. It was a vow that had failed and refused to die. The High Warden sliced the arm off with one clean strike. Black fluid sprayed. The severed hand twitched on the floor like an insect. The bond flared again, reacting to violence, to fear, to the pressure of survival. Her heat spiked. The relic in her sleeve drank greedily. Rot rose with it like smoke. The High Warden swore again, eyes snapping to her. Hold your heat. I'm trying, she hissed. The carriage door shattered. Two hollows pushed through, moving with jerky patience. One wore a cracked helm with a sunburst etched into it, radiant. The other wore crown mail, old enemies bound together by rot. Their mouths opened, and a sound like a groan and a prayer came out at once. The High Warden stepped between them and her, sword raised. She felt his fear through the bond, not of death, but of failure, of letting rot bloom, of letting the gate taste her. The hollows lunged. He struck one down with a slash that took its head clean off. The second stumbled forward, chains clanking, and grabbed his arm. Its touch was cold. The High Warden hissed in pain. Black veins surged beneath his glove, darkening instantly. Rot. The hollow's empty sockets turned toward her blood. It reached. The High Warden roared and drove his sword through its chest, pinning it to the carriage wall. The hollow writhed, chainmail scraping, still reaching. She couldn't let it touch her. She couldn't let her heat flare. But the bond was already surging, demanding alignment, demanding power. She closed her eyes and let her blood rise. Not wild, not fearful, controlled. She reached for vital heat in a different place. Not panic, not fury. Desire. The memory of his hand on her knee, his arm around her waist, his mouth on hers. The heat that came from yes. It bloomed in her belly, warm and bright, and the bond caught it like a spark. She felt it rush into him. He gasped. His sword arm steadied. The black veins at his wrist eased a fraction, as if soothed by chosen heat instead of coerced terror. He looked at her, shock in his eyes. She met his gaze and spoke, voice low, steady. "Take it," she said, "but don't force it." His breath hitched. The tether didn't punish her. Truth. He swallowed and nodded once. Then he moved like a storm. He ripped the sword free, decapitating the pinned hollow in one swift motion. Its head rolled, jaw still moving as if it wanted to finish a prayer. Silence fell, heavy and sudden. Outside, shouting continued. Steel rang. Horses screamed again, then fell silent. The High Warden stood panting, sword dripping black. She trembled, heat still humming beneath her skin, the bond alive and hungry. He turned to her slowly. His eyes were dark. Not with cruelty, with something worse. Need. He took one step toward her, then stopped. "May I?" he asked, voice rough, gloved hand hovering near her cheek. Her breath shook. She knew what he meant. Not just comfort. Not just touch. Alignment. Synchronization. Something that could become more if they let it. But the hollows had come because the bond had flared. Because rot had tasted coercion. Because fear had fed it. If they didn't steady now, more would come. And the gate would listen. "Yes," she whispered. He cupped her cheek through his glove. Warmth poured through her, thick and soothing. The bond steadied, the ache easing. She felt his restraint again, strong and trembling. He leaned down, mouth hovering near hers. "Tell me to stop, right now," he said. Her pulse hammered. She should. But the bond was humming, the danger still close, the air still tasting faintly of rot. They needed synchronization. They needed chosen heat. "Don't," she whispered. His eyes darkened. He kissed her. Harder than before. A kiss that tasted like violence restrained and desire allowed. His mouth pressed to hers with a hunger he refused to take further without permission. She kissed him back, breath breaking, hands bound and useless, body leaning into him. The bond surged. Not painful, bright. A rush of warmth that pushed back the cold, that soothed the black-veined bruise in the air, that made the rot recede like a shadow forced into light. He broke the kiss abruptly, forehead pressed to hers. His breathing was ragged. So was hers. The bond steadied, humming low and satisfied. Outside, someone pounded on the carriage frame. "High Warden!" a voice shouted. "More on the road!" He pulled away, control snapping back into place like a mask. His hand lingered a heartbeat longer on her cheek. Then it fell. "Stay here," he ordered, voice flat. She laughed softly, shaking. Where else would I go? He opened the shattered door and stepped out into the cold, sword raised. She caught a glimpse of the road beyond, the bridge approach, the white and gold cloaks of sea knights scattered, some fallen, some fighting, wardens in dark armor holding the line. And beyond them, at the edge of torchlight, shapes moving in the snow. More hollows, drawn by rot, drawn by the bond, drawn by her. The High Warden looked back at her once, eyes dark with warning and something else, something almost like devotion. "Hold your heat," he said, "and if the pain returns, breathe with me. Remember the yes." Then he turned and charged back into the night, the Crown's feared enforcer, with rot in his veins and her desire in his hands. She sat in the shattered carriage, bound wrists pressed to her mouth to keep her breathing quiet, and felt the thorn-bind hum like a living wire. The road to the cathedral was no longer a road. It was a battlefield. Somewhere beneath Crownspire, the hollow gate listened to the sound of chosen heat pushing back coerced rot, and decided it wanted more.